working. Yay!
So how has it been with your students? Have you seen most of them, or how?
Well, there's 80 of them, so so I haven't got everyone.
Right.
Although I certainly have tried, and I really have pretty good engagement. I think I'd be curious to see what other people's numbers are like. I've been tracking mine pretty carefully, and I do think I have pretty good engagement. I even have, I have lots of international kids who are back in China and Japan, and actually I'm meeting with them this afternoon at 5:30. So, yeah. So, managing to sort of engage around the world here.
That's amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
So they all managed to get home, did they?
Yeah, some of them have actually only just gone home, but I would say sort of after about the first 3-4 weeks, the ones who wanted to go home got home. Others chose to stay, and I think they chose to stay because they wanted to make sure they had a place to come back to, because they're in these homestays, right? So yeah, tricky spot for them, I think.
Yeah.
Do you guys have classes right now? I know.
I'm starting a class in June. With 3 colleagues, so the whole thing's going online, which is going to be quite an interesting development.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So normally the students that I would be teaching would have had a practicum, but this year they haven't. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for them.
Oh, yeah.
Make up practicum for students.
Well, it would be interesting to have an online practicum, wouldn't it? Because I'll tell you what, there is lots to learn.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be short of things to learn if they could.
It might be helpful for teachers too.
Yeah, possibly, because the
University of Manitoba actually did that. So they finished their students doing an online practicum. So
right, yeah.
So,
just because it's kind of you have to sort of revision how you want your class to go and how you can. I mean, thank goodness we were in the middle, or that we were 7 or 8 weeks into our semester, because having that connection with the kids first made a huge difference to being able to maintain it, right? So. So it would be. I think that would be a valuable experience, actually, for student teachers.
I think you're right. Yeah, because who knows how long this is going to go on, and what
it's going
to look like in the fall for teachers.
Oh, crossing my fingers for that. Because that's the joy of the job, right? Is the face to face. Yeah. So.
Anyway, we have a few questions for you. So we'll start out with the questions, but if there's anything else that you want to add in or change the topic, feel free to do that as well, okay?
Okay.
So maybe we'll just start with you talking a little bit about what is it you're teaching right now? What have you been teaching over this past year?
So all English, actually, and I've had right now I have grade 9 English, and I have New Media 11. So the grade 11 English curriculum has split into these 5 different courses, and so I have New Media this semester, and then last semester I had an English 12, and I taught 2 creative writing blocks at the grade 11 level.
That gives you a bit of variety through English.
Yeah. Although my background, like I have a chemistry degree, that's my first degree, and so I've taught lots of science, lots of math. I taught social studies, English. I teach English because I love it. Okay, right? So, yeah.
So, in recent years, have you taught science and math, or have you transferred into English?
Well, I have 24 years of teaching. So, first 10 to 12 years were really, I would say, science focused, and I, was sort of the main chemistry teacher where I was, and it's been over since I moved into District 61 that I've actually ended up pursuing the English, sort of for two reasons. One, because that's where the jobs were, believe it or not. I was always told that doing a chemistry degree would ensure I had work, but it didn't. It was actually the English that got me the work. And then because I had that opportunity, and I've always taken lots and lots of English. I have a minor in English. I just I love it. And actually, if I'm being perfectly honest, as much as I like teaching science, I love teaching English. So there's a difference.
So you're in the right place.
I think so. Yeah, although I've lost my position because of this whole thing, so I don't know where I'm going to be in September.
Oh
yeah,
no.
yeah. I've been declared excess to needs, so
At the school
at
level?
at Mount Doug, and I've been there for over 10 years. So
Really?
oh yeah, so we had a kind of a big hit
Yeah.
because of I think because probably the international
You're right.
student population. Yeah. So,
That'll all be sorted out in the next couple of months.
crossing my fingers. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
So maybe middle school.
Maybe.
I hope I'm going to go teach with Chelsea. Actually.
That would be lovely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're growing, right?
Yes, yeah. So I'm really crossing my fingers that that's gonna maybe that'll be something to do.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So last time we talked to you,
Yeah.
you were commenting on your thinking about assessment over the years, like that you've been doing things in a different way for quite a long period of time, even before you started using the Google Sheets and all of that.
Yeah.
So can you maybe talk a little bit about when you started doing things differently and why you started doing them differently, teaching English or what you were teaching, and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah. So I guess it really, I would say, even as a student teacher, I started to really think about how putting numbers on things just felt always just like rating things. And I enjoyed that as a student, to be perfectly honest, because school was easy for me. And so it was nice to be rated and ranked high, right?
Yeah.
Like and that kind of fed me a lot as a student. But as a teacher, when I started to do that and reflect on that, or as a student teacher even, I started to think about how there's a degree of, like, it almost feels like arbitrariness in a way to that. It also doesn't feel like, I never felt like I was doing my job. And I wonder if that also was informed by the fact that I was a nurse before I was a teacher. And so as a nurse, you spend your whole day assessing people from head to toe. And you are not looking to give them a 7 or a 9 or you are, unless you're doing an APGAR score or something like that, right? You are looking to see, this is where you're at. This is what I'm going to do as my course of treatment. Where are you going to get to, right? So that's very much the thinking that really informed my work as a nurse. And because, well, in some ways I want to say nursing was harder for me than teaching is. And what I want to say is, I guess that it was harder because it was more foreign to me. So I really had to understand what I was assessing. Like, I really had to know what I was looking for.
Right.
And I really had to know where I wanted patients to get to. And so then I think having had that kind of ingrained in me, when I came to teaching after my nursing career, I looked at learning differently, I think. I looked at assessing my learner more like a patient. And this is where you're at, and this is where I want you to go. And putting numbers on things was never informative.
Right.
But, initially, that was the way I thought you would do it, because that's the system I went through. So that's, you learn, what you've worked with. And I also, I had amazing mentor teachers, but they also use numbers. Everybody around me was using numbers, but it just did not fit for me. And I could see with the kids, because they always ask the question, what did I get? And that question just drives me crazy. And it did, like, from the very beginning, because what I wanted to say is, like, read what I wrote
Right.
for you, or let's look at what you're not understanding, or let's look at what you actually can do. That's another one, right? Like the kids who really struggle, instead of focusing on, I wanted them to really look at feeling some success around, like, this is what I can do so that we can move forward. Because I know with those, and I work with a lot of struggling learners, and I really like to work with struggling learners. So I know that they, one of the things they really need is to experience success. And if you're just getting 3 out of 10 all the time, you never feel successful. Like I think as a learner, like, I knew how it felt to feel like ranked high, even if I think there's something false about that. But I knew that I wanted them to have that kind of feeling. I mean, I knew also that I was learning as a learner, because I love to learn. So there was all this sort of disjunct around the practice and where I wanted kids to go. So I kind of fell into conforming with the numbers, because you have departments, and everybody's older than you, and and especially like science and math, like, this is the way we do things, and we rely on numbers, and we believe numbers, and they're truthful. And so I followed that along, but really once I became sort of the chemistry person, and there wasn't somebody else doing that, I started to really go, well, maybe we could look at assessing this or that, and I kind of talk with the kids. I tried out kind of different teacher talk with the kids rather than the number focus. And that still wasn't enough. And then when I moved to just before I moved to Mount Doug, I taught at Rock Heights for a little while, and this was my step into the public in Victoria. And I taught home ec, so cooking and sewing, to the kids at Rock Heights. And I'd never taught those subjects before, and I don't know if you know Rock Heights very well, but it's a fabulous clientele. They have a real special set of things that you have to take into account, and putting numbers on things wasn't really going to work very well there either. And so we're really looking at, like, well, if your sewing is all over the place, like, we have to fix that, because you're taking that pillow home,
right,
to use in your home, right? So I started to really think about those kinds of things, I guess. So that's kind of maybe like 10, 12 years in. And then when I got to Mount Doug, I was like, well, why do I have to use an average for my number? Does that have to be it? And, I have a pretty comfortable with math and the statistical stuff. So I thought, why don't I try out some of the other possible stats? So I tried those out, and then I tried, median and mode, and kind of looking at what does that do in comparison to an average. I never, ever let kids know what other kids' marks are or where they sit within the class. Like, I just have always refused to do that, because I just have always pushed them back with words to, let's talk about your learning. So I've always was doing that with words, but still the numbers weren't lining up. And then I shifted to kind of like a grid, and I narrowed it down, and I said, I'm just going to put letters on. I'm not going to do the numbers, because I know that I can't distinguish between a 98 and a 93. I actually just, there's no way. I know I can't do that, but I could maybe shift to some letters. So then I shifted to letters, and the kids would, so I would put a letter on their assignment. I also I played around with just words, like meeting expectations, not meeting expectations. I liked the meeting expectations. I liked exceeding expectations, but I didn't like not meeting expectations, like, because the wording's not right there. So so, I played around with that for a little while. And then I just stopped putting numbers on things. And I have not put numbers on things probably for 7 years. And I just focus on the feedback. And then the competency chart sort of came in right around about the same time. So, so what I was doing without the chart was really a lot of descriptive. The chart just makes it more efficient.
Yeah. So when you were doing that, were you on your own? Did you have any colleagues who were doing it with you, or did you?
I would say pretty much for most of it, I was on my own. Like when I came into, I think when I came into Rock Heights, I had an administrator who I think if I had talked about it with him, I think he probably would have been super supportive, because I subsequently had him as an administrator at Mount Doug, and I know him well enough now to know that he would have been supportive. But I was new in the district, and almost no seniority, and right, like you're always fighting for a. Fighting's not a nice word, but you're always just like, where am I going to get my positions? So you have to really suss things out pretty carefully. When I came into Mount Doug, I don't know if you know John Fawcett, passed away a few years ago. Fabulous guy. I loved working for John Fawcett. But the first time he called me into his office, I started talking assessment right away. And he said to shut the door for a second. And I shut the door, and he said, I want you to be very careful around here. I'm super supportive of what you're doing, but you have to know that the language that you're using, and that was words like formative and summative at the time. He said, just be careful, because you will get, put into a compartment that maybe will not keep this open. So I was quiet about what I did. Because and also I think because, like now I'm never quiet about it. And I'm never quiet about it because I'm confident that what I'm doing has the best interest of students at heart. And so that kind of gives me the confidence to sort of say that I'm not claiming it's perfect, but I know that what I'm doing is increasing their life chances, really, that's my aim. So if what I'm doing is working towards that, then I'll tell you all about it. But I wasn't absolutely certain, and that's probably has to do with the science and math background and a trust in numbers and that kind of thing. When I first started playing around, and I also wasn't sure where that was going to take me, and I didn't see necessarily how easily that could take me to not using numbers. And that really, if you don't want kids to ask you about numbers, you have to not use them. It's the only way. Otherwise, it seems only reasonable that they would ask you about them, and that would matter to them.
So how did you move into the use of the form you've got now?
So when I should also say that when you ask me about did I have colleagues doing this? So Alexis, of course, and Alexis and I just by happenstance ended up having desks kitty corner to each other during a prep walk for 1 year, and so because of that, and it was the same year that Aaron Norris, and I'm not sure if you know Aaron Norris, that was the same year that he came to Mount Doug, and so funnily enough. I was just introducing myself to Aaron, and he said something about assessment, and I took the John Fawcett line, and I said, Aaron, be careful. I just want to let you know around here that we have to come kind of through the back door with that one. But I'm okay. You can talk to me about it. And so. And I should have known Aaron better to know that he wouldn't be afraid to speak about it. But anyways, he then talked to me, and he also talked to Alexis. So then Alexis and I talked to each other, and that's how we got things really rolling around the competency charts. And as soon as he said, hey, this is a possibility here, I just said, okay, well, I'm in. I'm doing it tomorrow. And I literally went home and built them over the weekend and was right in. with my classes right away.
How did you get to the platform, the kind of chart that you're using now? How did you, develop that?
Yeah, well, I think it came kind of naturally right out of the new curriculum, because it was actually as soon as those draft curriculums were out, that's where I was going. And that's partly out of having student teachers, because it didn't make any, I knew it was in draft, but it didn't make any sense to me to take student teachers through a curriculum that was going to be not the curriculum we were using probably for the bulk of their career, or as they're moving into their career. So I looked at moving into that draft as soon as it came out. And then if you look at the way that was given to us in draft form, it's already sort of in this kind of, it's on its way to a table shape.
Right.
And I always use the IRPs really closely. I've always felt it's really important to make sure, so I would always have checklists for myself about what I was teaching and assessing. But I kept that more to myself. And then with Erin's suggestion, this kind of opened up the possibility that we could just share this directly with students. And I had done also, actually, when I think about it, I've done a fair bit of, I've always used rubrics.
Right.
From the very beginning. I remember when I was a new teacher in Squamish, they asked me to do a workshop on rubrics. And I thought, oh, that's so weird that they're asking me, I'm a brand new teacher. Doesn't everybody use rubrics? These make sense. So I've kind of always worked in that kind of a format. And then the curriculum kind of seemed to lend itself to that. And as a way to get to know the curriculum, what better thing to do than to go through and group and organize in ways that make sense.
Right.
So that's how it sort of got into and both Alexis and I are really comfortable with spreadsheet work.
Right.
So, and the spreadsheet just seemed, is so flexible, right? With and you know what else was happening at that time is we were shifting to Google.
Right.
Right. So all of a sudden doing that just made a whole bunch of things kind of aligned.
Right.
I think to make that easier, because the Google allows for the interactivity with the kids, and it is just so much easier because you can access it from wherever you are, and you're always in your most recent version and all that kind of stuff. So I would say that there were kind of probably a lot of those externals that all helped make it an easy thing to do.
Can you just describe?
I just have one more.
Right.
Sorry.
I just want to pick up. Yeah, hold that question, Kath, because just on that Google Sheets, can you just explain to people how it works? I know we know, but I just want you to say in your words how does that work for a student? They come into class and you give them a Google Sheet and you say what to them?
I make sure, first of all, that they know that this is their own special sheet. It's specifically for them, that it's shared between me and them, and probably for me, it's a parent, and then maybe if they have a learning resource teacher, we all have access to this. That the chart is set up, so I would describe the chart set up for them with novice and developing and proficient, and then we would have to go through, we go through, or I would go through with them a number of lessons, little mini lessons in getting familiar with the chart and how they're going to interact with the chart and how I'm going to interact with the chart. They really need that, and they need it over time.
Right.
You can't take them into it all in one go, especially with the chart that I was using a few years ago. Chelsea came on board and we helped sort of narrow it down a little bit more.
All right.
But it's a bit of a big document for kids. Well, maybe even for adults as well. I guess because I built it, I'm I know where everything is. Right? But for kids, it's a lot, and so they need to really interact with it before they feel comfortable with it. So it also depends. Like now I actually have to do less teaching around it because I have kids in the class who've had Alexis or Graham as teachers before, or, even like my new media 11, I have some kids who had Chelsea as a grade 9 teacher.
Right.
So now I have them as 11s, and they're like, oh, I know the chart. And so they know how to interact. And then because they know, if you have kids that have never had this experience before, they're side by side, and they really do help each other. They're like, oh, don't worry about it. This is what you do. Don't worry that there are no numbers. This is how this works. It's better. I mean, usually that's what they say, because kids are sometimes reticent.
Right.
Who don't have any experience with it. They're like, oh, just give me the number.
Right.
Yeah.
But they
I don't know if that answered your question.
Oh, beautifully. No, I just wanted that
Okay.
beginning bit was lovely, right? And part of it, I was just imagining students realizing they can hyperlink from the cell with evidence. That step I find fascinating, because it then opens up, well, whatever you can put into this hyperlink becomes an artifact, right? And then the artifact is your rationale behind it, right?
Oh, exactly. And that's another place where they need to, you kind of need to walk them through it at first about like what you can do with your comment box on there. And so then when I'm wanting to assess particular things, I always will take them through instruction about working with that. Like some things I will get them to assess like right on the chart. Sometimes I get them to assess off to the side. But when they're assessing right on the chart, I walk them through what I want them to be thinking about and looking at and writing and maybe linking in there for me.
So I'm assuming now you're going to have to do this all online coming up. Is that right?
Yeah. But that's no problem,
right?
Because well, you know what? It could have been more difficult if I had students who've never done this before and had not met them. I do currently have students who have not used the charts before, and they happen to be, most of them are in my new media, and most of them are the kids who are in China and Japan right now. But those kids are pretty proficient with their media. So, I've just been screencastifying, or, we get on Messenger and back and forth, and I show them, and so it's not been too bad. And I think, what the big factor is first of all, that they know you, and that they trust you.
Right.
And if they know you and they trust you as a person, which is why all of this really comes back to spending the time at the beginning of class really getting to know who kids are.
Right.
And, knowing their names. Like I spend a lot of time, I make sure I know their names right away first day. And then when they're coming in, and this is probably going to change in the next little bit, but I always shake their hand on the way in, or a high five on the way in, for the first class, and I go around and I sit and I chat with them, and we don't necessarily talk about school, and I do that with all grades, because if you can get them to the point where they trust you, and they trust that you have their learning at heart, they're much more willing to go on the learning journey when it gets hard and when they experience discomfort. Because I'm taking them there, and they know that I wouldn't take them somewhere.
Right.
I might take them somewhere uncomfortable, but I won't take them somewhere that's going to injure them. And so, because the chart requires trust,
right?
Because it's so different,
yes,
than what they're maybe experiencing in other classes. That's starting to change a little bit, though. I think because I think kids are coming from middle schools with more experience, from elementary school with more experience around assessment that isn't so number focused. So I think we're going to see that actually changes over the next little while.
So
the trust is huge.
Yeah. So how has your changing assessment, which is kind of evolving all the time, how do you see that changing your pedagogy and your planning, like all the rest of the teaching pieces?
Well, I think it makes it easier actually because you've got your whole year before you, which like that's my kind of thinking. I always think long term, and then I come back and kind of like I do these right. So I've kind of always done that. But it was interesting actually because we of course have had to pare down the core competencies that we could get taught in the last little bit. So yesterday I just did an exercise for myself where I went through and I looked at, okay, these are the things that I've been able to teach, and these are the products that I'm asking them to go through a process and make. What rows on my chart is that going to assess? Where am I at? And I just was able to go through all of the rows, and what I was sort of aiming for, and this was my thinking from the beginning, was, you know what, ideally I would aim to get as many kids to the proficient column as possible in every single competency.
Right.
But I knew I couldn't do that. So what I have to be happy with is that, can I get them to developing in these competencies, right? And so, and in some, I'm only going to get them to emerging, because we just, not that they wouldn't, I mean, some kids will be beyond emerging, but I haven't had a chance really to do the teaching on that, or to offer them the opportunity to actually show me all the evidence to take them beyond. But because I have it all set up on the chart, it's actually really easy for me to see what I've done and where I still need to go in the next few weeks. So I guess it lays it all out so clearly for you. And then I think at the beginning of the year, like this is why I'm like super excited now if I can get into middle school, because I'm thinking, okay, this is new charts, right?
New charts.
I will create.
With Chelsea.
And it's a chance to like imagine like building the whole program.
Yeah.
For 30 kids, where I know that I'll be sharing with other colleagues courses and that kind of thing if this happens, but imagine the experience of that for 30 kids across all the subjects, and being able to have them really, because what you can reinforce is the way you learn.
Right.
And so I can do that all day long with those same 30 kids, and the potential there is like tremendous, I think. So so what I will do, so that'll be my first step. Let's just say I'm lucky enough to get something like that. My first step will be to go through, and I will build the charts first for the subjects that say a grade 8 would go through. And then I will look at each of those charts, and I will look for places where there are commonalities that because if it's my day and they're my kids all day, then I can do thematic stuff throughout that crosses the curriculum.
Yeah.
Like and I can see that by looking from one chart to the next, like from English to social studies to French to science to math, like.
And you could color code that so that each cell would maybe have a hub that was also in other things. So one cell could actually be like multiple, like, so English and drama, right? And CTE, and everything's happening in one. Because I remember I was with Chelsea, and she had them doing their poems for the English, and they're reading them out. But their friend was putting it up, and they were trying to record a video so their parents could see it. But then they were now performing, and their friend was giving them feedback about keeping their eyes up and like. And I said,
remember those poems she showed.
Yeah, they were doing drama. I said, "Oh my God, they're doing so much drama here! It was unbelievable." And they were coaching each other, and then and watching the video, and then redoing it again. It was like, I said, I want a video of them doing a video, giving feedback to improve their performance, because that was a lovely narrative in its own right.
Absolutely.
And the body confidence,
And you've got that social emotional component all the way through.
Communication competency. Yeah.
So I'm gonna first build. Oh, sorry, that's my. Can you hear my dog?
That's okay.
It's 4 o'clock, isn't it? No. I gotta move to a different room. There we go. So I think I forget what I was gonna say there.
So in relation to that, like if you're thinking that you might end up at med school, which would be really exciting, are you familiar, like with Fresh Grade, with like a portfolio kind of platform?
No, that'll be new to me. So I think if I should move to middle school, I think Chelsea and I are gonna get together in June and do a little bit of work around that. I kind of like to see if I can use that in combination with the charts. Because she says it's much easier for doing report cards than the other options. So I definitely want to look at that. But I think what I'll need to do probably is build the charts first, and that's an excellent exercise for getting familiar with the curriculum again, because it's been a while since I taught grade 7 and taught grade 8, and I've never taught the French before, so that'll be new for me. I'll use it as a like teacher exercise to start with, anyways, and then that'll. If I know the curriculum well enough, then I can go into the Fresh Grade and sort of see how can I morph this to do what I want it
It'll be an easier transition for you.
Yeah. I hope so. Yeah. I'm excited to see what it is. Chelsea seemed pretty happy with a lot of things in it. So yeah.
When do you find out about where you're going to be located next year?
Well, probably not till I think they have to. It depends. I didn't make it through the mobility round. I didn't. There wasn't enough stuff there. So if I don't get laid off, which I really hope that 10 years is enough to not get laid off, then I should know by Wednesday, Thursday next week what they're gonna offer me.
So one thing, Caroline, if you do get that offer, because I mean I was talking with Chelsea before when she was trying to put the two things together, we'd love to, help you listen to that, plan it out, because one of the things that you're describing, creating the chart, I think to follow that process would be really helpful for other teachers, because it's that thinking that you're going through with assessment driving your thinking. That's different to the tendency we have to do a linear curriculum doing content to teach kids, and we don't think about assessment to the end. Whereas you actually are planning it totally around assessment. So you're breaking the curriculum into assessment pieces that students can digest better and progress, right? So if you do get that,
I bet you can hear my little dog.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna take. Can I step out for one sec here?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, just a sec.
So you can start asking questions.
Well, you've covered most of them anyway.
Sorry about
that. That's all right.
I should have. It happens every day around this time. I should have anticipated.
So one of the questions I was going to ask you, because you've answered, I mean, we were trying to do it a little bit in two parts, but your way of describing assessment technology, you've blended the two beautifully together, Caroline. So one of the things I was thinking about is how well does the platform you're using help students of very different backgrounds, like the high achiever compared to the struggling student? How would you describe their experience with the charts? Give examples, if you like, from Pacific kids.
I think they definitely have different experiences, and if in terms of their struggles. So I think the high achievers, their struggle is that they want to quantify usually, and so they ask questions like, well, what does a 90 look like on here? That tends to be what their focus is, and they even sometimes I've had kids go so far as, well, I had this many blocks shaded out of this many blocks, so that means I have a, right? And and that's the higher end kids who will do that kind of thing. They just have a natural tendency to move towards something that's numeric, and then I have to shift them to think about their learning as opposed to what the number is, because they're so much more driven by that carrot at the end, as opposed to, which I think ties into, there's and I'm sure you've read the research about grading, where you get these very bright kids who opt for, and we probably all have done it ourselves in university. We're like, that's an easy A, right? And so kids, they will sometimes tend towards, if you're putting the numbers on, they will tend to do something that's going to get them a better number. So it's usually my high achievers that are motivated by that. And then, so they struggle with just descriptive at first, partly also until they trust me. Like the second time I teach them, it's no problem at all, because they know that their mark is not in jeopardy. It's their learning that we're focused on, and
right.
They understand that with me. But when they still have to learn that, and it usually takes, for someone who's a real high achiever and really marks driven, it could take half a semester really to get them there, and sometimes a bit longer. For the struggling kids, I think probably it's kind of the bigness of the chart, the language of the chart. And so I think this is one of the things I'm excited about around the middle school, and starting again now with the knowledge that I have in building fresh. How do I make these really understandable for kids? Because you absolutely have to. And I would like mine to be more understandable for high school kids as well. So I think for struggling learners, it's a lot to take in. But I also think that it's kind of a double-edged sword, because then once they start to engage with it, that clear information about like, this is what it looks like to be an emerging learner, and this is what it looks like to be developing. It's much clearer information than this is what a 3 is and this is what a 6 is. Like, right. There isn't the clarity around that, and also that ability to go back and redo.
Right.
Both groups like that.
Yeah.
Once they trust that's possible.
Right.
The higher achievers tend not to trust that that's possible at first.
Right.
Because it's not being their experience as much.
So the descriptive helps them know how to move forward, right?
Yeah. And I spend a fair bit of time working on.
Oh. Network issue. Whoops. Nothing.